Next, we've heard all the fine talk giving us a certain sense of direction, but now we're going to look at the continuum transformation, and very first one is finance, because we all do know how essential it is. Mr. Adomako just mentioned it. So we'll have a panel conversation, and I'm excited about who will chair this because she is a Bleobi as well. She's a CEO of Ascent and Arts. Please put your hands together. Welcome, Constance Swanika. A woman who plays in the field where men play. Next, we shall have the Deputy MD of the Ghana Stock Exchange, Abinamoa. Joining them as well will be Julian Oponi. He's the Managing Director of Fidelity Bank. And last but definitely not least is Mr. Efrio Warrior, CEO of Access Pension. He would complete the panel for us. A round of applause for him. So please make ears, put your questions down, and I'm sure at the end of the session we'll have a chance to put our questions to them. Thank you very much. Constance, it's your stage.
And understanding the traits and the mindset of entrepreneurs, taking calculated risk. So the value that we place on intuition as funders or gut feeling decision making. And at the time of decision making, what indicators are you using at this point? Have you profiled or stereotyped a customer based on algorithm or your own background experience working with the client? So maybe I'll start with Abna.
Thank you very much, Constance, and good morning to everyone. Your Excellency and Madam President, for inviting the Ghana Stock Exchange to be with you here. The purpose of the Ghana Stock Exchange is to facilitate access to long-term capital for businesses and provide a safe and rewarding investment environment for investors so that together we can grow our economy, grow businesses, and be relevant and hire people. So the Ghana Stock Exchange is there to facilitate access to long-term patient capital through something that the Stanford Seed stands for, partnership. And when I look at the mission of Stanford Seed, I was really impressed with it because it absolutely aligns with what we do. Transition local companies to international players, working alongside member companies, partnership, through the journey of transformation and paving the way for others to follow, leadership. So the Ghana Stock Exchange is about partnership. And when an entrepreneur who is ready to share their vision with other people who are not coming in to run that business, because the Ghana Stock Exchange pools public funds, a whole lot of hundreds and thousands of potential investors in Ghana and around the world who are permitted to invest in Ghana. The entrepreneur sells their vision to them, and the entrepreneur is ready to account back to these thousands of people that this is how I've used the funds you gave me. And account, let's say, every half year, every 6 months with financial results, put in place governance structures, including a strong board, independent board that can give guidance to that entrepreneur. Then that entrepreneur receives those funds and makes those investments that will grow the businesses. What we do at the Stock Exchange is to facilitate this process, bringing those that need capital together with those that have long-term patient capital. We currently provide for 2 main types of capital. And today I'm here to talk more about what we call equity capital. Because what we realize is that a lot of entrepreneurs think of financing only as debt capital. And there are enough bankers here to tell you that debt capital can only allow your business to grow to this level. But when we are talking about transformational businesses, which is what SEED stands for, then we are mostly looking at patient capital you don't need to pay back, especially the equity type. That is where you invite other people to come to your business as shareholders. And so when we look at the countries and economies that have developed significantly, including where HE is from, the US market, the venture capital market, the private equity market, the public market for long-term patient capital is where many businesses today that we use their products, the Facebooks, the Microsofts of the world, that is where those transformational businesses have raised the patient capital that they need to grow. Stock markets allow the investors who have given these monies to trade those securities. When they are, because they don't want to necessarily hold a stake in your business for 50 years, if their needs change, then we provide liquidity for those businesses or for those investors to trade in the securities you issue to them as they've given you that capital. So we are there to facilitate it, and we like hearing the stories of entrepreneurs who are ready to share.
Thank you very much, Abna. But my question to you, you're the Ghana Stock Exchange. Now, 2 years ago, I was looking for short-term funding. You'll be the last person that I'll think of, because Ghana Stock Exchange, how many companies you have even listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange? And I think our conversation this morning is, financing that is agile, looking at the environment within which you need and the timing within which you need the funding. And then we also, I loved listening to Kofi, where he said all the things that I wished I had heard 2 years ago. He also said something that, banks are walking the walk now. However, I asked whether you had ever put ourselves in our shoes. So you are talking about interventions that for us, I wonder if any of my members are part of the Ghana Exchange. So I will throw that question to Julian, who I've had extensive conversations with, because they are actually our bankers, and he knew what my transformation journey was like at the time where, our bankers thinking of impact investing and looking at the context within which our businesses are operating, because I see myself as a social entrepreneur. Julian, the first interaction that I had with one of your relationship managers was he didn't know my business. Kofi said something that we know our businesses better than you do. Now you sent me a relationship banker who walked in and said, I didn't understand what you're trying to do. So my facility was rejected. The second time, I almost left the bank, and I came to see you, and you knew exactly what I wanted to do, looking at the context of the environment and what I was trying to solve, the problem I was trying to solve. We also talked about innovation. We also talked about how agile banks are moving. As a recap of what happened, if you look back, would you say that you wish you had done things a bit better?
That's a difficult one. I knew she was going to put me in a corner today, but that's fine. There's always, I don't over-ponder over things that I can't influence, but there's always the opportunity to learn from mistakes. Now, the truth is, talking about empathy, these are things that the banks can face, but even in your business you will face, because if you're not also able to filter your values and your vision through your organization, you will face exactly the same challenge. And so there will be the odd occasion where maybe, as we said, what we speak and what happens on the ground, there may be some divergence there. But I think that has improved significantly. So going back to what you said, yes, the truth is using algorithm and gut feel in our environments is becoming less of the case with the banking sector, because it's obvious that the reliability of what you put in has an impact of what comes out. And so if you put information in an algorithm, it tells you it's okay, and then the loan still goes back bad later on, then you understand what was the quality of what you put in. A lot of banks have invested in internal capacity building. Back in the day, I used to say, when it comes to a business, what are the 4 key needs for businesses in the room? And the top 4 needs that we from the bank identified were access to finance, which is more the obvious one. But if you put access to finance, what helps you to get access to finance? And we talk about the regulatory framework in which you're working. We talk about your access to markets to grow your business. And then finally, we talk about capacity building. But capacity building works in 2 ways. It's not just capacity building for the target borrower, but also from the bank point of view. And I think as banks, we've invested a lot of effort and time in partnerships. And Kofi spoke about partnerships. We need to create ecosystems, because whatever you do, the bank will never be the expert in the knowledge of your business. Whatever you do, the bank needs to leverage on other partners who have the expertise and understanding and staying closer to businesses, especially where there are loans out there, and reporting back in the language. So you accept a language that we understand from you, which is we're speaking your language, and then also feedback in the language the bank understands, and that creates the bridge. And so, for instance, from Fidelity, last year we launched our Young Enterprise Fund. Again, you mentioned earlier on about creating ring-fenced funds, which are treated very differently. The lending rate on that is in the region of 10%. And that's a view that we took to say, how do we support businesses where the owners are between the age of 18 and 40? I don't know, it's 40 seems to be on the high side, but that's what we decided. So it's 18 to 40. And the truth of that is, we're not using algorithms and standard understanding. There are real impact areas we're looking at those funds meeting. But it's not just about lending, it's about creating the ecosystem as a pilot to change the story of what you just said. So we have other organizations that will support those businesses in building their own internal capacity, in monitoring what they do with the funding, ensuring they have the right governance in place, and ensuring that the sustainable principles that we put in place are actually being adhered to in those businesses. So the story as it was 2 years ago isn't really hopefully what you'll be facing now. And banks are being forced to become more relevant within the whole ecosystem discussion around sustainable development of Ghana. I long for the day when a banker or someone from a bank will walk into an environment of businesses and there'll be open arms as opposed to maybe guns behind our backs waiting to shoot. And that's what's happening currently.
Thank you very much, Julian. So my next question goes to Kofi, who said everything I wanted to hear. So Kofi, looking at how Ghana has just had to leapfrog into the 4th industrial sector, we talked about sustainable financing for innovative and social entrepreneurship. If I find a lot of our business leaders here are actually in that space already. A lot of our companies are fintech companies. We have educators, and we have companies that are also in the agri sector. You also talked about West Africa not having a good ecosystem of social entrepreneurs. But I'm posing the question to you that you said everything that I wanted to hear. What are you doing differently from the other banks?
Good. What are we doing differently from other banks? I think in GCB we have made the focus of small to medium enterprises and even large corporates. We've made it an integral part of our strategy. We have looked at the entire ecosystem, and in the past, we probably had been banking sections of the value chain. But now we are looking at things more holistically. We are looking at things from the customer's perspective. We are trying to make an assessment, and like I said, we have intentionally ring-fenced capital for this type of business, meaning we have understood the risks, we know what our risks are going to be, and we have forecasted what the outlook is going to be. And this has been done intentionally. It's in the past, maybe what we had done was that we treated this business as BAU. But to do this thing very well on a sustainable basis, to make the impact you want to make, you need to treat this whole thing as a project on its own. It won't just happen overnight. And what I like about what GCB has done is that we have nailed the issues and we have deliberately included it in our risk appetite. Okay, so we are ready for that type of business. But we are also throwing a challenge to the private sector to also look at their businesses well. It is also your responsibility to make sure that your bank understands your business. Because if you are banking with somebody who doesn't understand your business, it's not going to go very far. And trust me, when the difficult times come, which will come, they will jump off. Because they don't understand your business and have not built that confidence. So it's not only the banks who have to understand the businesses of their customers. Yes, the banks have to, but the customer also has to insist that the bank understands its business. Our duty is to understand what you need and provide a solution. So GCB may not be doing anything too different from what other banks have been doing, but the extent and the time and effort we have put, the focus is where the difference is.
Thank you very much, Kofi. So let's talking about disruption and the timing within which we sit in. And this goes to my next speaker, my guest. What would you say about partnerships? Because Kofi and Julian has talked about capacity internally for their own staff and for us to understand our businesses. You, I'm sure, are also borrowing money from global leaders or global partners and then borrowing to us. We want to understand the localized context. We also talked about the macroeconomy and the challenges that banks face, to lend at favorable rates to customers. Where you sit, what would you say is your contribution to the ecosystem as well?
All right. Thank you very much. So we are a pensions management company. Our role really is to mobilize savings for investment. And because of the nature of our work, we have to ensure that the funds are deployed very safely. And so our pensions regulator has given us the remit within which we can invest our money. So our role primarily is to invest according to the investment policy that has been prescribed by our pensions regulator. But to give you a gist of where our funds are located, we invest in listed companies, and in this case, Abena provides us the arena. We also deploy capital to private equity firms. Our first foray into private equity was 3 years ago. It's still a new asset class that is developing locally. We also invest in bank fixed deposits. And I am sad to say that the largest holdings of our assets is in government treasury. And it is not something that is sustainable for economic development. Of course, this also raises a certain obligation. I mean, how do we ensure that our businesses are viable and are investment worthy? I think it is a bigger question that needs to be addressed holistically.
Okay. So I'll just ask one round of questions and then would like to open up the conversation to our guests. I want to talk about regulation. Now, the government talks about the private sector being the engine of growth, and we also understand that sometimes as banks, your hands are tied because the powers that be also borrows money to you at very high cost, which you transfer to us. Now, when we look at, the timing of the need to quickly fast-pace the industrial agenda, working more closely with private sector, creating the enabling business environment. Conversations like this, very, very timely. What are you doing as the middle, the person sitting in the middle, pushing governments to say that, look, we cannot continue borrowing at such interest rates. I don't know whether this is a difficult conversation to have, but where do we begin to have honest conversations and say that private sector really cannot transform if you continue to lend to us at high interest rates? Maybe that will go to Abner.
Thank you, Constance. And again, a 3 years group over there, and you're all entrepreneurs here. I know you pay tier 2 pensions, tier 1 pensions, and some of you do tier 3 pensions as well. The tier 2 and the tier 3 pensions are managed by the pension trustees and fund managers. And today, they have over 25 billion Ghana cedis under management. They are much bigger than SNET. Their regulator has given them room to invest almost half of that, up to half of that, in private companies like you. At our last estimation, about 10 billion Ghana cedis of pension fund assets contributed by you guys in this room and many others like you are available to be invested in equity securities and long-term corporate bonds issued by companies like you and that are listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. Over 10 billion Ghana cedis. All we are asking is step up and take this money. Because you're not stepping up, governments, they keep giving it to government. I don't want to hear about high interest rates because there's equity capital. I know many of you are scared of ownership, giving 25% of your business to another investor, but your transformation network requires you to partner, even amongst yourselves. So Afriyie and his team, the last IPO in Ghana was in 2018. MTN Ghana, who definitely doesn't need our public money, was able to raise 1.1 billion Ghana cedis. MTN Ghana has access to international capital, has a lot of profits that they can keep investing in their businesses. But thankfully, they did an IPO, which we're exceedingly happy about. They raised 1.1 billion cedis. Access Pensions and the other pension managers today have 10 billion Ghana cedis looking to invest in well-run Ghanaian businesses that want to issue equity securities list on the Ghana Stock Exchange. Stanford Seed is in a very special place. Ghana Stock Exchange has set up a Ghana Alternative Market, the GAX market. The chairman of the GAX market is sitting right here in this room. Please stand up, Mr. Apenting. One of the businesses he's associated with, Intravenous Infusions, is one of our most successful stories. Came, raised money, was it 2018 on the GAX market. They do facts behind the figures. They have access to international investors. They can continue to raise any capital they need to fund their activities and expansion. They pay dividends. There are even companies on the main market that don't pay dividends. And so this is the story we are here to tell. Do not be afraid of opening up your businesses, raising the capital. meeting those transformational goals. The funds are available. When we come to the Ghana Stock Exchange, we are not just talking about interest rates. And you're right, interest rates are high. They are high because government sets the benchmark. The benchmark is high because prices are rising. The rate of inflation is rising. What the Ghana Stock Exchange gives entrepreneurs like you is the opportunity to diversify your financing sources. Stop thinking only about short-term debts. That does not transform a business. That solves a short-term working capital need, because long-term capital, and on this case I'm focusing on equity capital, is what will move your business. And Kofi won't lend to you if 90% of your business is funded by short-term debt, because you cannot pay back. You will default. So Kofi says, here, make sure 40%, 50% of your financing need is permanent capital, where you can get from Access and all the other pension fund managers that are there. Fidelity even set up a private equity fund. Work with those people who will continue to support you on the governance levels, on the opening up to other networks, and support the rest of your financing with short-term money. And that is what we facilitate.
Thank you very much, Abnam. So prior to us visiting you at the Ghana Stock Exchange, we see you as this very exclusive club. And I'm sure to a lot of the guests here, I said to you that the last thing that we would have thought of was the Ghana Stock Exchange as an option. And I think I speak on authority when I say that a lot of the business owners here have reached a stage where their companies, having gone through the transformation network, understands structure. I find it easier working with international development partners who are offering equity options. Now, if you sit in the environment, in this space, and if we hadn't known this, it took us just maybe a few months ago to even step on the floors of the Ghana Stock Exchange, this exclusive boys club. But look at all this information out there. And I'll throw that to Access Capital. What are you also doing about opening up the conversation and telling people out there there are financing options? Is it because maybe there's a bigger reason why you're very quiet? So this is to you as well.
I think you are forcing me to answer Abner's question. Really, it's a mixed bag. For us, we only deploy capital to institutional investors. And the private equity space is shaping up very nicely. The ecosystem is building. And so it's just a matter of time. But what we say is there are stages of a business that informs the type of capital. And so in seeking, explore what options are available in the ecosystem. If you are developing a long-term project, then certainly you need to look beyond the banks. And that is where private equity comes in as a system. If you are developing a long-term project, then certainly you need to look beyond the banks. And that is where private equity comes in. Axis has deployed dollars into private equity funds in Ghana. And our peers are doing the same. And so I think it's the lack of awareness through a local private equity firm and an international private equity firm. So I think we need to be open about the various financing options that are available.
And so conversations like this then opens up the bigger conversation. So, Julian, as a bank, do you also have special funds that sit in your bank for long-term financing?
Yes, and just to touch on what you said about what are we doing with regards to dialogue on, I think you were referring to regulations, etc. The truth is, There is a lot of dialogue going on in the background because we, from the banking sector, and I think the whole financial ecosystem understands that it's not going to be sustainable going the way we are. The crowding out effect conversation is happening. And there's a very distinct balance between government's ability to start so the others follow. Because it's a competitive play when it comes to the pricing. But the pricing is not a factor of just what you borrow from Bank of Ghana, etc. It's also a lot of creating efficiencies to reduce the cost and also making sure non-performing loans go down. So finally, to your question about, yes, we do have ring-fence funds. I mentioned about this Young Entrepreneurs Fund. That's our own funds. We decided to lend at 10%, and we're creating an ecosystem, and we will grow that substantially. We're also in lots of partnerships with the likes of the Dutch government, where we're looking at youth and actually lending in the region of around 5% in that area. We're also currently having a conversation with another government agency where we're going to do a larger scale youth enterprise and more in agric and other sustainable areas, where it's going to be a blended financing option with some guarantees to reduce the price further. So we are doing our bit, and I think the whole banking sector is having these ring-fence conversations around capping exposure to government and creating internal funds which can focus on actual sustainable business ventures.
Thank you very much, Julian. So we'll wrap up our conversation with just one last quick question and a very short answer, Kofi. Customer and customer experience. Everything now is about experiential. So business is not just business as usual. Would you say that banking right now has a more of a human face? Kofi?
Yes, I would. I think banks are...
You can use your mic.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would. I think, look, there's no doubt the business of banking has been disrupted, not like the noise outside, but it's been disrupted significantly by fintechs, and payments have heavily been disrupted. Banks have no choice than to reshape their businesses, and they are doing so. And in doing so, they've put the customer at the center. What are customer habits? What are the things customers are doing? And how do we provide solutions to our customers? In all of this, what banks want to leave with customers is the experience, the encounter with the bank, whether in person or on a phone or an app. That is what all banks are striving to achieve now. So it used to be customer services. The design and the philosophy is all now moving towards customer experience. And technology is fundamental to all of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So big round of applause to you. From our guest, or if we don't have time.
5 questions.
Just 5 questions.
Yes, 5 very short questions. Please keep the preambles and shoot the questions.
Thank you very much. I've enjoyed your discussions. My problem is with the IT. Now, with the current IT, for which most of us born before computer cannot follow. you get an alert, and sometimes you see the alert, there's a debit, for which you haven't signed any check for anything. But then your money is going away. How do you get protected? I hope you get my point. Yes. Monies are being stolen from the banks, from our monies, through the IT. That's happening. I don't know whether you are aware, the bank managers. You'll have some guys in the banks that are so smart that they are taking away people's monies. Let's see how you address it.
I wanted to find out for the Ghana alternate market, is there a financial cap? Like, the companies has to be a certain worth before they can apply. Maybe you can give us a little more on the small print.
Quite evident. Is this a contribution that there are pockets of opportunities for raising funding across the table? I think what appears to be missing is a link around the table. So a borrower will go to a bank and ask for funding, and the bank will say you need some level of equity, and it is left with the borrower to go and find that equity. Is there the opportunity to create a forum where there's an engagement between venture capitalists, banks, insurance companies, etc., for there to be a single-stop discussion around this, so that it is not left to the borrower? Ideally, it should be the borrower doing this, but I guess the capacity to do that is very limited, and that leaves a lot of opportunity on the table. Thank you.
3 questions from the audience. Who would like to take the first one?
Okay, I'll just say something small to the first speaker. The stealing of money from bank accounts, but when they steal, they alert you, which is very interesting. They steal and they alert you. I don't think, I think stealing is rather a very strong word, and I don't think they are stealing. In this business, errors happen, okay? So sometimes you've taken 52 cedis, but what has hit your account is 520 cedis, okay? When you have these things, I think most of the banks have a way, established way of making a complaint, and it will get rectified. In some cases, it depends on what the transaction is. The transaction itself will rectify by itself. Sometimes you go to an ATM, you don't get the money, but it debits. You see on your phone you've been debited. After a few hours, in some cases, it reverses. In some cases, it doesn't. And we are sorry that some of these things happen, but you only have to go to your bank and inform them, and they'll address it. If it was a real fraud, you are unlikely to get an alert to say, I have stolen 10 cedis from your account. So when it does happen, please feel free to contact your bank, and I'm sure they will politely apologize and do what they have to do. Thank you.
Very much, Kofi. So the second question, I think that can go to Abna.
The financial cap.
Yes, so the GACS market is very simple. We've made it the easiest market to come to. You can be a startup or you can be an existing business. The minimum stated capital, which is even after you have raised money to get listed on the GACS, is 250,000 Ghana cedis if you are raising capital. So for raising 250,000 Ghana cedis minimum, you can get listed on the GACS. We are even reviewing it to say that a company may not be ready to raise capital, but is interested in getting listed on the market, observing how the market behaves, and then coming to the market to raise capital when they are ready. In which case, you can list even without raising capital. We've had one company, Pessoa One, do that this year. It's called listing by introduction. We also don't have any, we require a company that is listed on the GACS generally to have, if it's not a startup, to have had a 3-year operating history. All of the companies in here more than meet that requirement. Must you be profitable? Ideally, yes. But even if you haven't been profitable in the past, you must show that you have the capacity to make profits in your future. In terms of costs of listing on the Ghana Stock Exchange itself, the application fee for listing on the on the GAX market is, I think, 5,000 cedis. And then once a year, you pay 4,000 Ghana cedis. That is what comes to the stock exchange. There is no annual renewal fee. We've made the entry requirement accessible for everyone. What we ask you to do, though, is to invest in your corporate governance structures, which is exactly what Stanford Seed is taking you through. So if you are ready to meet those corporate governance structures, we are more than willing to welcome you. And of course, we will make sure you work with advisors so that pension fund managers, people who are taking care of our monies, which we will go back for 30 years down the line, can feel confident to invest it with you. We have entered into an agreement, an MOU, with Stanford Seed. And as part of that agreement, we have a whole host of educational activities for you, because as you sit here in the room, not only are you potential issuers of securities on our market, but you are the cream of investors we are looking for on the market. So just this year so far, the stock exchange, the equities market is up 46%. There are about 12 companies whose share price are up 50%, some of them almost 200%. Are you guys investing? When one of you comes to raise capital, will you be the one putting 10,000, 20,000 cedis to support that business? So these are all part of our educational programs we have planned for your 108 members and even globally. And another key thing we'll be doing is market readiness assessments for the companies that are ready. We have your cohort booklet. On my view, just because I use your product, I know there are at least 25 companies I want to see on the GAX. And I say these 25 companies I think can come. But our target really is that by the end of next year, at least 10 of you are listed or far advanced in the process of getting listed on the Ghana Stock Exchange. Thank you.
Very much, Abna. So there was one last question that Julian, you would answer, and then we'll take our seats.
Okay, I'll do. I know we're out of time, so I'll do it very quickly. I think something was said earlier on about not just talking and doing. And what you mentioned is basically creating an ecosystem where all the parties are available and you're creating a one-stop shop. So why don't I throw a challenge and say, why don't we start with a target group of Stanford Seed? Why don't we create that ecosystem where I am prepared from where I sit from Fidelity Bank to allocate a capped fund specifically for that ecosystem for Stanford Seed. And then we agree who the other players are. So you're talking about the stock exchange, you're talking about pension funds, etc. Because sometimes you need traditional borrowing to get you into readiness for something like an IPO. But it's not just about the access to finance. The ecosystem needs the capacity builders. The ecosystem needs those that help you create the readiness for that long-term sustainable funding. The ecosystem needs the provider of, if like the access to the information and gathering all the key players in. So if we walk away with something from here, why don't we create a test model with an ecosystem based on Stanford Seed members and see if we can create that ecosystem?
Thank you very much. So on this note, I'd like to say a big thank you to our speakers.
So there's
One last question.
There's a question from Akwesi Sapon. He's joined us online. I think that you've partly answered that, but maybe I get commitment from GCB as well. It says, to GCB and Fidelity Bank, will they be prepared to have shares in startup businesses by young people by investing funds in their business?
The simple answer is yes, but through a different vehicle we have already established. Yes.
And the same here. Our Young Entrepreneurs Fund is basically that, and it's going to create the same ecosystem that we've mentioned, and that's already in play.
So Thank you very much, speakers. I think my love-hate relationship with the bank has just been dispelled. Today's session has been very informative and insightful, and so we look forward to a closer partnership with finance institutions, and I think I speak on behalf of the other business leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you.